Okay, welcome everybody to the AU Core Workgroup call for Thursday, 23rd of July, 2026. My name is Steve Swinsberg. I'll be your host today, and we've got a pretty big agenda to get through. Um, so first, I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country. So HL7 Australia acknowledges and pays respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of Australia, and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Okay, our agenda for today is so we'll run through the usual stuff, the usual business and updates, the minutes from the last meeting, and a couple of updates and some news. Michael will be taking us through the Spark testing event report back that we had a couple of weeks ago. Brett will be running through the ballot review of AU-based changes, and then Michael will again be running us through the AU encounter record FHIR proposal, and then we'll wrap up. So firstly, the minutes. What I might do, I'll see if we can get to this. It should still be sharing. Yep, great. So these are the minutes. So I'll spin that a little bit. Big screen. There we go. So these are the minutes from the meeting from a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review those. The main pieces of content that were discussed in there was a block vote around adding the missing resource support to the AU core capability statement. So there was a bit of a mismatch in some of the profiles and the capability statements, and also the AFMM one review of some of the profiles that we've got in AU core. Ran through the QA report and then looked at the ballot scope as well. So there's an upcoming ballot, which we'll talk about shortly. So those are the minutes. Has anyone got any questions on those, or anyone want to um, uh, bring up anything to discuss with those? Otherwise, we can move to have those accepted.
Steve, I'm happy to motion that we accept these minutes.
Great, thanks, Michael. Do we have a seconder to uh, approve that motion?
So seconded.
Great, thanks, Stephen. Now I've got to find the poll. Okay, approval of minutes. Here we go. Alrighty, so there should be a poll on your screen. If you can't see the poll or can't vote, or have dialed in and don't have the ability to click, just put a comment in or call out um, your answer.
I'm +1 in the chat.
Yep, sweet. Also got Landon as +1 in the chat also. Thanks, Landon. Okay, we're at 80%. So I'll count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we'll end that poll. So the results of the poll are, for the recording, we have 58% affirmative and 42% abstaining and 0 negative. So that one's passed. Thanks very much.
Steve, we'll just do the counts.
Oh, sorry.
So,
Yes, counts. Okay, so 15. So out of 26 voters, 30 people on the call, 15 affirmative,
plus the chats.
plus the chat, so 17 affirmative and 11 abstain.
Cool.
Great, thanks. Alrighty, now I'll just go back to my screen share here. And okie dokie. All right, so action items. Okay, so there's a couple of action items that have been raised over the last couple of months. I don't know if who we've got on the call, if they can speak to any of these, apart from you, Michael. Um,
Well, I can talk to
do
mine to start with.
yeah, yeah,
The work group meeting agenda. Yeah, once we get through this ballot stuff, we'll do that. I'll put it's still a to do for a future meeting as soon as we've got the space. I've got an update on the Confluence page for the output to the harmonization group. They're going to be looked to be published on the Spark website. Tor is looking at that at the moment, so it won't be Confluence site, but it will be publicly accessible. As soon as they are published, I'll let this group know where they are and how to get to them.
great. Thanks, Michael. Angus or Corey, do we have you on the call, able to talk through any of those?
I'm on the call, not paying
Hang on.
attention, but hang on. Right. Hello, hi. Sorry, I heard my name, but I wasn't listening.
There's
Which
a couple
item?
of yeah, the raise report searching guidance as a topic for discussion of future eCore workgroup meeting. And there's another one for considering an invariant for dot result and dot presented form for discussion as well.
Do you want these tracked as action items, Angus, or you just raise them when you think you want to?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what they were. Consider invariant for result and presented form for discussion. Yeah, I'll have to defer. Can't even think what they're about.
Yeah,
Just
it's
be
okay.
comfortable. We can remove them. Like, I mean, that was, I think when we were having discussions around diagnostic report, there was a few things that you thought we might need to talk about more. And I think they were just brought up in the minutes as action items. If you bring them up as items and bring them to a meeting when we wanted to talk about them. But maybe they're things you bring up in ballot or the like. I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
Okay. I can think what the second one is, but I'm not sure about the first one. Yeah. So yeah. So you want me to talk to them at some work group like now, but not now.
Well, it's if you want to. I think that was just the action item to say that you thought we needed to talk about it, and we kind of stopped the conversation on some of these things and said we can
Well,
talk about them later. So this is
yep.
something that you can bring forward if you want to. I think we can probably stop tracking them. I think they can be brought up at any time whenever you want. You just need to let a co-chair
Yeah.
know, and we'll put them on an
Well,
agenda
I
item.
can certainly talk to the second one. Like that's clear as mud. But
Mm.
like if do we want to discuss it or do you want me to raise something? Like
So this would be, yeah, if you wanted them as an agenda item for a forward meeting,
Yeah.
right? So, but given we're going to ballot, maybe they're ballot items if you think you need to raise
I'll do
them.
them in ballot. I'll do it, which is exactly what I'm doing right now, is signing up for ballot. So I'll do them as ballot items.
Okay, excellent.
If I can remember what the first one was.
No worries. Do we have Corey? Otherwise, we can hold that one over as well. No, Corey? Okay, so we'll hold the rest of those over then. Um, okay, so coming up in about a month is the HL7 FHIR Connectathon, which is being held in Brisbane. The tickets are open now. You can register using the QR code on your screen. Um, the tracks, there are a number of tracks. They're actually discussed in the minutes from last meeting as well. I'll just bring that up on here. So there's a couple of tracks running for a core e-requesting smart app launch and the connected care consumer journey. So the connected care journey is essentially bringing together the multiple IGs that we had, similar to the Sparked test event, where we're trying to get lots of the IGs coming together to really build that actual consumer journey. Um, so you can sign up for those tracks on the sign up page. And yeah, that's being held at South Bank in Brisbane, different to the normal spot, but yeah, Ridges and South Bank. Anything else you want to say about that, Michael, or anyone else?
No, unless Heath, you wanted to.
Oh, yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
spiel
just
about the connected care?
I won't spiel. Just if you are interested in connected care, perhaps reach out to me. There's actually a Zilla chat that's letting you know that there's already coordination calls happening on a weekly basis to prepare for this. So we've got another 4 or 5 of those that we intend to prepare. So if you want to be a part of that, you need to let me know so that I can add you to the list. But it's also the meeting details are also on the meeting page on Confluence, like the calendar page. So you can join without an invite as well. So it is happening, and we're working through a scenario tomorrow, looking at who wants to play what role to fulfill a bit of a consumer journey. And this is all based on some work that we did as a bit of an art of the possible from the November meeting in Canberra, where the government demonstrated where all this investment in standards is taking the industry to help digitisation of healthcare in Australia.
Great. Thanks, Heath. And in case you can't use the QR code, there's a link in the chat that Shelley has put in for signing up. Next up from HL7 Australia is there is an upcoming FHIR ballot. So to sign up for this, you need to be a current HL7 Australia member and also have signed up on either Confluence or Jira, the HL7 org one, to have an account there. And then you actually have to sign up to the ballot. So there's again information on the screen there. If you are a HL7 member, you should have received an email about it, and you can follow the links there just to fill in the form about which IG you want to, or sorry, which ballot you want to participate in. Okay, so next up is the Spark testing event report back, and I'll hand over to Michael. Do you want me to
Yep.
keep sharing, or do you want to?
No, I think I'll share. So
Sure.
I will replace that one. And okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. Go through this. So we had a Spark testing event in Brisbane on the 8th of July. So we had one of these the year before. So this was our second Spark testing event. They kind of fall in between HL7 Australia Connectathons. We had a great turnout for this. We had, I think, close to 50 participants, which was a full room because they're a more sort of smaller event targeted on hands-on testing. The role of this event is really just that similar to a Connectathon, sort of hands-on environment for testing FHIR-enabled products and sort of foster that collaboration amongst implementers. And we were looking to test in this all of our Australian IGs from AU Core, e-requesting, Health Connect provider directory, patient summary, smart forms. So we had a big breadth of IGs there to test. And this one running a bit differently to how we'd done before, where we'd been pretty siloed. You might have just been testing AU Core, or you might have just been testing e-requesting. We really wanted to look at connected test scenarios in this. So we're trying to sort of test things that cross the boundaries of IGs and weren't just siloed, and looking at things that weren't necessarily even in the IGs, things we wanted to extend, or looking at what we want to do towards the future. So we were really focused on these connected test scenarios as part of this testing event. And it was giving us the opportunity to sort of showcase interoperability between systems, while also doing what we normally do, which is sharing insights and sort of input into refining these implementation guides. And our goal was to demonstrate the interoperability across systems and connect test scenarios and gather that essential feedback. So it was quite a success. It was a busy day. I know that every time we had a break for meals, everyone was too busy and was sitting down busily working away. So it was really a really great day. So on that, we had 5 test scenarios that we were working through. And the first one was an e-request, e-referral with provider lookup. The next one was smart app launch, including resource write back. The third one was focused on patient summary exchange and reconciliation. Fourth one, medication dispense. That's some of the new stuff we've got in AU Core with reconciliation. And scenario 5 was appointment lifecycle with encounter exchange. So looking for that, I don't think Michael Osborne's with us today. He's on leave, I think, but he was the lead for this scenario on e-requesting e-referrals. So we're being a bit generic here. If you were doing an e-requesting using the e-requesting IG, you could do that, or if you're trying to test e-referrals and the like. The key thing we integrated into this was the provider lookup. So the Health Connect Australia provider directory. So you could look up the provider before creating a request. You can see there the different connections that we had on the day. We had lots of people testing the provider directory, which was that first step in the scenario. And then we had others that were creating requests on different e-requesting servers and e-requesting in the ABox one as well. The second scenario was Smart App Launch and the resource write back. I think, Liam, I do have you on the call if you wanted to give a highlight of this one.
No worries, I'm here. Thanks, everyone. So I think you can see from the connections diagram here that we've got 3 clients and 3 servers that participated in this test scenario. Nearly all those clients and servers were able to interact with each other. So smart apps were able to launch from servers. They were able to have data pre-populated and then also write data back to the servers. So there's a range of different resources being written back, but one I hadn't seen before, which was really interesting, was document reference resources successfully being written back to the launch servers. So I think overall, this test scenario was demonstrated quite successfully. And then other than that, we were able to also squeeze in some Inferno test runs. So we got some runs done for the Smart App Launch Client kit, and also the Smart Health Checks and GPCCMP kits.
Cool.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Liam. The next one was patient summary. We can see we had lots of test scenarios here. There's lots of arrows on this, lots of participants. So this was quite a popular track. I don't know, Danielle, did you have any particular comments on this track?
Yes, I would, and I've just clicked the wrong button. That means I'm just seeing your face instead of the slide. Whoops. Okay, I will say that it was really nice to see. I think the next level step that was being worked through, and I was really impressed with the work that Oracle and Halo Connect were doing together, which was looking at reconciliation. They also tapped the Spark FHIR server. So Oracle brought their HIE, and it's the first time we've had Oracle at a testing event in Australia around patient summary or core FHIR data. And they were able to connect to a number of servers and pull together a reconciled, consolidated view of a patient's up-to-date electronic health information using kind of patient summaries across multiple different endpoints. So I think that was really interesting, and it was really interesting to see that because it wasn't just like, I guess, a narrative view, but it was brought into their UI and how that would actually work for a clinician that uses, I guess, a Cerner kind of like an Oracle interface. So that was cool. I think that was probably the highlight for me.
Thanks, Danielle. The next one was medication dispense with reconciliation. Steph, were you available?
Yeah, I've got poor network coverage at the moment, but the connections are shown there. I just will say that it was a great atmosphere and really rewarding to see the new medication dispense profile being used alongside other AU Core medication-related specs in medicine management workflows. And our testing partners are really looking forward to extending these in the connected care track, the next connectable.
Thanks, Steph.
Thanks.
I think that's a good point. This literally went in the IG a day or two before the testing event. So the fact that anyone was testing it at all is pretty impressive. So that was good. And then I think finally the fifth test scenario was appointment lifecycle with encounter exchange. Liam, this was your scenario. I think you had a keen interest in testing this.
Sure, I can talk to
Landon.
this No, that's okay. I can talk to this one. So this is mostly an experimental scenario. We're trying things we have not tried in AU-based or AU Call before. Being able to consume different appointment schedules, slots, how that might look, how we can create encounters, and possibly reconcile like a possible encounter summary or something like that from that particular workflow. So it's sort of like an integrated workflow and how that might look. And it might end up being something similar we do in the connected care tracks, possibly with Heath in the next Connectathon. But there was some success in trialing some of these workflows out. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Landon. So you can see there in the diagram on the left, they were all the connections. We made over 50 connections on the day. So there's a pretty awesome spider web there on the left, of all the different colors of the scenarios connecting across systems. So it was a huge success. If you'd like to know more about what those test scenarios were, what was tested, you can have a look on the test scenario Confluence page. It's got all this info on there. I think we also did collect some test evidence while we're there for AU Core. And I think, Danielle, you might want to had a couple of slides to share on some of the coverage we got.
Yeah, I'll share my screen. I don't have slides because we're madly and finishing it up. But let me just share my screen so I'll see if there's approval to replace the current share.
Yep.
And then going off to, let me actually find the right site. Here it is. Okay, and I should put this in the chat. Let me just find it. So all the results and so forth that's up to date goes into oh no, that's the old one. Sorry. That's the R2 one. So there's the semi-real time as much as we have data one that we keep up to date. So off the AUCO FHIR IG testing, we've actually collected what we think is just about everything. Although there's a couple of people we're trying to chase up, and I'll talk to that now. Um, because I think we need to chase down maybe Brian, and I think there were some things around the scenario that was connecting into provider directory that we need to follow up on. So off this, we've jumped from having 38 different systems that we have results for across AU Core to 45. So there was quite, I think, an extended coverage there. I'll call out some of the ones that I remember off the top of my head. So Oracle brought the HIE. We also saw the Australian CDC come to the testing event, bringing what their early thoughts are around, I think, some of the disease reporting and so forth that will come into the CDC, and I'm hoping that we see them at the next couple of connectathons, with potentially an IG, maybe even a server and some more test data. Um, I think we had a debut of the Platypus app, which was pretty cool, that Kyle's been working on from CSIRO. And some of the other new stuff was from VP Tech. Um, and who are the other new ones? What else do we have here? I know there's some more stuff, and apologies if I'm missing your name when I call it out. Oh, okay, good. Yes. No, we had Health Direct video call, and I thought that was really quite interesting, and how that connected on the day. So that was really quite useful. So I guess in summary, what that has looked at for coverage of our new stuff. So we actually really quite extended significantly the coverage of both existing and new resources. I'm only going to focus on the new stuff. So composition, we have had 28 systems testing the requirements of our core composition. So we're pretty gold on that one. From document reference, we've had 9 systems looking at document reference. From endpoint, we've only got 2. I'll talk about that in a sec, but we need more evidence. I think there was more on the day, and we need to follow that up. Um, Also, in terms of new stuff, medication dispense, there were 5 systems that we have evidence for, in terms of exchanging or just creating internally medication dispense records. Um, what else is new? Oh, diagnostic report. We also have 5 as well. So those are the new profiles. Now, what that means in terms of what we think of as the minimum maturity from testing, where we want at least three independently developed systems testing at least 80% of what are the must support and mandatory item elements. Um, so we've actually got incredibly strong evidence now where composition, so the new stuff where we're looking at, and that is not the new image. Tisk. I think I have it somewhere in my. The update didn't work, but here we go. Here's the new image. So, um, what we have across composition on the right, we have 100% coverage. So we have more than three systems, and in fact, in many cases, we've got a lot of like double-digit systems testing 100% of every must support and mandatory element defined within the profile. The same with document reference. We have covered 100% of those requirements, so we've gone beyond the 80% requirement. And the same with medication dispense. For all the items that we have tagged as must support, for all the items that are mandatory, we again have more than three systems that are covering that. So that's great. So we've now formed the basis that says what we have now is a reasonable level of maturity, and we've gone through and done some interoperability testing that's saying that this is actually working for scenarios. Um, Quick call out though for endpoint. We don't have any, and maybe Steve, I don't know if that's something that we can reach out to you for. For the scenario that was using provider directory, we don't have any evidence of systems connecting and using the endpoint data. So I'd like to know who we need to follow up so that we can have a look at that. But we've only got basically the agency and the sparked dev server that loaded them in the first place, but none of the evidence of connections there. So we need to, I guess, track it down. Under the assumption that there was, I think, were people connecting to and using endpoint on the day. Do we know?
I thought that there were, in terms of, I know that I was chatting to Brett and maybe Landon about endpoints on the day. I'm not sure if it was actually covered though.
I think that e-requesting stream had connections and they would have been picking up the endpoint to use for the next step. So they should be a set of clients there.
Okay, so in terms of, because I mean, obviously we have also have the Brisbane Connectathon where we can get some more evidence related to this. But I think if we think that people were connecting and using this on the day, if people can identify what that would be and let me know, then I'm happy to reach out and ask and follow out to people on what they were using so that we can get a better picture, I guess, of the maturity of that resource profile. And that's about all I have to say on that.
Okay. Thanks, Danielle. I think that was pretty much a wrap up from the test event. It was a great day. I think we all got a lot out of it. So yeah, looking forward to the next one.
Excellent. Thanks, Michael and Danielle, and everyone who gave an update. So I'll hand directly over to Brett now, who's going to run us through the ballot review of the inherited AU-based changes. Brett, do you want to share?
Yeah, would you mind doing the slides? I just
Oh
have a
yeah, I
few
can do that.
slides and yeah, nothing much else
Sure.
to
So
show.
give me one sec. Uh,
Good,
Go to that guy and
cool.
show
Yeah,
them.
so yeah, this is about the ballot that's coming up. Please do sign up if you haven't done so already. Yeah, so we do have some breaking changes that have been agreed in AU base and are being brought through in the ballot. And this is highlighting some of those that will flow down into AU core in some fashion. Some of these have more or less impact depending on obligations and must supports in AE core. So this first one, we do have some changes that were a set of changes that went through on some of the identifier data types that we have defined for specific data types. So there were some terminology changes and some actual profile changes for a few of these. So if you're implementing data types as part of an organization identifier, which is a must support in AU Core. It's probably important that you look at these and just decide if there's an impact to you. Um, the main kind of breaking change perhaps would be the ABN, the business number, which is one of the one that has obligations on it in a core, specifically for organization. So that has an additional requirement to fill the identifier type with the code ABM, which is a new code that was introduced in AE base. So if you're doing anything else for that, you'll find there's a breaking issue for you. So yeah, so if that's going to flow through into testing and into AU Core R3 as we go through ballot. That's probably the major problem, if you think of it that way, that you'll need to consider and perhaps correct to be AU Core R3 compliant down the track. There was a change to the definition of the NOI term, which is used for the HPO identifier. That won't have any wire impact on your implementation. So if you're doing HPO with that identifier type set to NOI, you'll be fine. Nothing much has changed. There was a definitional change. There are a number of other data type identifiers that are have changes to them. So PAIO, ACN, and the ARBN, which are company identifiers. They've had changes to the identifier type value setting to different values and requirements. So if you are using any of those, that will flow through into your implementation as well. Although that's a lower impact because there's no specific support requirements for those for AU Core. But you should probably be aware of it if you're trying to represent those specific things. Any questions on that one? No. Move on to the next one, Steve. Okay, so these now this is a much lower impact change, but probably notable. Healthcare service. There was some go on, Daniel.
No, I guess I'll go at the end because I'm interested why this
Okay.
is low impact when we use the word to replace.
Yeah. I mean, it's low impact in the sense, um, this particular element is not a must support in AU Core. Um, I mean, if you are using it, you will need to look
Oh,
at your
okay, no, thank
implementation.
you. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah,
understand now. It's neither a
yeah,
mandatory nor a must support element in
yeah.
AU Core, so therefore
Correct.
it's only impactful for systems that are using that particular
Yeah,
element. Okay, thank you.
yeah, correct. So, yeah, so it will, and that the use of this terminology is only preferred in AU base as well. Um, although you'll probably find if you are actually implementing this particular value set, you may find you'll get different errors and warnings, and there's maybe you'll be using deprecated terms in your implementation if you don't consider it. So this is something you probably want to look at and adjust if you are using this particular value set. So there's a set of term changes there. This has come through with work from mainly the agency and NHSD to kind of update these terms. So there's essentially a set of terms there, some fixes to definitions, and also some clarification of concepts by deprecating some codes and adding some new ones. Danielle, well, you were first.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify so the, so I think behind this is both a value set and a code system, not just the
Yeah,
value set, I think. Okay. So I'm I'm assuming that what this looks like to me is that in the code system, we've deprecated certain codes.
yeah,
But we've taken those out of, so they're like, we've removed those particular codes from the value set, so they're no longer in there, and then put in new codes that are the ones that are preferred. Would that be correct?
I believe that's right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah, so that's specifically the BBO and FBB terms have been deprecated in the code system, and the new terms BB and mix have been introduced, and the value set has been adjusted to drop BBO and add BB, and drop FBB and add mixed. Richard.
Found my mute. Um, I'm just thinking the high impact, low impact. Perhaps the thing is to say impact everybody who uses the resource or impact some people who use the resource.
Yeah, yeah, true. It's more this sits outside of a core required use. So it's there's no obligations on this particular element. So if you are implementing it, you will care in terms of you'll get AU base differences coming through to your errors and warnings. Yeah. Cool. Any other comments on this one? Nope. Last one. So this was just to highlight something coming through for discussion. So this is not a change that's happened yet, but we have an agenda item on this particular issue. So there's a reference there to a JIRA ticket. This came through from Angus around diagnostic report code value sets for pathology. And there was some discussion about adjustments to AU base definition that we have, which would flow through into the diagnostic report, core diagnostic report profile, as changes would be made. So this is just to highlight that discussions are ongoing, and we plan to have a breakout session at the Connectathon specifically around this topic. Angus, did you want to add any light?
No, not unless I assume we're not going to break it open and talk about it, but no. Yep. So I'm supportive of this, believe it needs to change. And as we speak, trying to work out how I include it in the ballot.
Yeah. And I think I think the main thing is that the discussion is happening and it will have an impact on AE Core if decisions are made. So yeah, get involved if you're planning to use AE Core diagnostic report as a profile, which is hopefully on your radar.
Can I?
I think this is a good one to get involved with, Danielle.
No, I was just gonna say, so ideally, I guess, Angus, we've got the breakout session, which we've scheduled in, and let us know if you want to change that, which was the idea out of the firework group. And we've made sure that at least Andrew, if not Corey, will be available for that, who are the people who, I guess, put forward the AU Core Diagnostic Report profile. So we'll have those people in the room. And let me know if there's anything else you want to coordinate with the AU Core crowd around trying to make sure the right people are aware that this is a conversation we're going to be having.
Yeah, David Willock's the only other person from the RCPA, but I'll make him aware. He comes to e-requesting. So.
Yeah, so hopefully we have a vigorous discussion, come to some great consensus, and then a ticket gets raised for the ballot that we can then progress on. And
I don't think it'll be that vigorous. I'll be like, yes, it's wrong, fix it.
Well, that's good. That's fine too.
I mean, if that works out, then great. Sure, I'm going to take that as what you think that will happen, and then let's see what does. I've often
Absolutely.
walked into change meetings thinking, oh no, something will be obvious, and then like 5 months later. So let's see how we go.
So I think the idea is to at least get to a resolution of some kind through that breakout session that can be presented back to the work groups to finalize into action or non-action. So that's it. And that's it for me, I think. Cool.
Is that
Actually, could I ask Brett a new ballot question?
Go on.
So the ballot's open for sign up, is that right? So I've just signed up. And then I have like some issues I've raised in the past which I'd like to be considered in ballot.
Yes.
I'm reading the instructions, but I take it I can't mark those issues to be in the ballot until the ballot opens.
Until the ballot opens. Yeah. Yeah, when the
Right.
ballot opens, you'll be able to go into those tickets and you'll be
And
able to choose vote affirmative, negative
from the status
from the
dialogue,
stats.
yeah,
Yeah,
which I can't do
exactly.
now because it isn't
It's
open,
not
right?
open yet. Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
that's all I
So
wanted to know.
like the ETA on that is we have until the 29th for sign-ups. So that'll finish up then. Um, and the after that there's a week gap in between where all of the balloting gets set up and ready to go, and then we're opening a week later, which is the 5th of August, I think is the date. So yeah, so that will then mean you can go and vote. We'll almost definitely run an information session either in that gap week or shortly after the ballot opens for voting to go through processes and things like that. We usually do one of those to take questions. Yeah, and yeah, there's contact details as well, ballot at hl7.au will get to me if you have any questions about signing up or participating through the
Yep.
process.
On that, Brett, yeah, so our next AECOR work group meeting, which I think is the 8th, which is it's a few days after the ballot opens, which I think is the 5th, we're going to do a ballot 101. So if you do want to participate, you do have to sign up by the 29th. But then we're going to do 101 on that in this meeting in 2 weeks' time, which also goes for the role of the work group. So even if you're not participating in ballot and voting in ballot, by being a member of the work group and coming to these meetings, you are actually participating. So we'll work through the resolution of all the items that come up through ballot. So we'll go through all that as a 101 on what the different roles are as we work through it.
Yeah, it's worth adding too, even if you aren't signed up to vote, like you're not a member, you can raise issues against IGs anytime if you're signed up to Confluence. Jira, Confluence and Jira. Yeah, so if you have any issues at all, you can always provide feedback at any time, as well as during the ballot period. And if you can get other people to vote on it, if you're not signed up to vote, that's one way to get it into the ballot reconciliation as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Brett. Now things back over to you, Michael, for the AU Encounter Record FHIR
Yep,
proposal. Do you
I
want
will share my screen.
Yep.
All right. Okay, hopefully you can see that now.
Yep.
So we're looking at bringing in another project into the AU core work group, and that's looking to be the AU Encounter Record FHIR project. So I'm going to take you through the first step of that is to accept a project proposal. We currently have other projects. We've got the AU Core FHIR project. We've got the AU Patient Summary FHIR project as well. So this is now looking at a third project under our work group for AU Encounter Record. So we're going to go through today a bit of background about how we got here, what we're talking about, and the idea is that we want to try and endorse the project proposal. So what is the project proposal and the work group's role here? So essentially, a project proposal provides that transparency to the stakeholders of the project. So they understand the expectations, the directions, the timeframes, and that's really to underline the support for the consensus-based standards development. So it's a part of the HL7 Australia governance that we do this. So if a work group wants to start up a new project, we create a project proposal. And as that work group, we want to evaluate that project proposal first and decide whether it fits our work group mission and charter. Are we willing to govern it? Does it overlap with any other projects that might be out there, whether they're HL7 Australia projects or others? Are there any other groups that we need involved? We need others to co-sponsor this with us. Once we do that and we accept the project proposal, we'll then look to go to the Australian HL7 Australia Technical Steering Committee, where they'll review and approve the project and monitor its progress. Mandy.
Hi, everyone. Just a few questions. I might be a bit off here, but I thought just to raise concern. Um, Regarding the questions for applicability or use for hospitals is one thing, but then we do have not just hospitals, and with that comes in public and private. Would this cover both? And would that be applicable for all the states? And what about between the linkage through other organizations that are kind of in the primary sector? Would this be applicable to all of them? Do we need people from those to come in and raise or test things? This came to my mind and I thought, sit back, they know it, they got it. And then I thought, just say, just in case. So sorry
So,
to hold you.
so what the first step here is actually us defining that we want a project to work on. That encounter record is something that we want, that we think we need. And so really the role at the moment is saying that, look, we want a project, right? Then what we do is we'll discuss in the project, once we stand up the project, we'll discuss the scope of that project, right? So this and this project will likely go through a number of releases, and for each release, we would define the scope. So we'll go for the first time for release one. What do we want the scope to be for release one? What does it cover? Who does it include? Those things. And then once we finish release one, we go, do we want to do a release two? What's the scope of release two? And for each of those releases, we'll do a project scope statement. And in that scope statement, we'll say, for the next release, this is our focus and intent. So once we stand up the project, we'll actually look to define that scope. So as it stands now, we have no project. We have defined no scope, right? We're basically saying as a group, this is something we want to work on and we want to stand up a project to work on it. So I think the next step, as soon as we start up the project, we'll start talking about the scope. There'll be lots of discussions we have to have about where we draw that line in the sand for that first release. What are we including? What are we not including? And work through that process. So I might
Sounds
just
good.
for the it's good time. We're not going to actually look to go through this in too much detail now because I'm going to come back round to this at the end. But this is the project proposal. And so this is the HL7 Australia template for it. And it's a one pager. Like this is it. So it's really to provide some visibility that we want to start a project and that we're willing to sponsor that project in this work group. So it's really, there's a title here. It says it's the AU Encounter Record FHIR Implementation Guide. And then the purpose. And you'll notice in here that there's not a lot of scope. There is scope discussed here, but it's not down to the level of what we want to put in release one and the like, right? Because this project will exist through multiple releases. So really, we're looking to develop and maintain an encounter record FHIR implementation guide to support exchange of encounter information within Australian healthcare context. The encounter record will support the consumer and their healthcare providers with timely and current access to relevant encounter-specific information to enable effective coordination of care. The scope here is really just representation of encounter information for exchange in Australian healthcare context. We're going to monitor, comply, and provide input into AU Core, AU Base, the FHIR standard terminologies, and the like. And we'll align with clinical data requirements provided by the Australian Clinical Data for Interoperability, AUCDI, and the Spark Clinical Design Group, and it's looked to be used to support consistent FHIR implementation for exchanging encounter information in Australian healthcare context. Now we've got a project proposer, which is actually Danielle. Target release date, which is a fair way off. We'd go through a ballot for comment and a ballot for working standard before we got to that first release, and that this work group would be the governing work group for it. So you can see it's a pretty simple thing. It's basically just saying that we want to create a project within this work group. We need to identify if there's any, like if we were whether this should be run by another work group or we need other work groups involved and the like, we could specify it here, but really just to provide that visibility, and then we would send it to the technical steering committee for review and approval. So then we can start the project up and start discussing about all the meaty stuff that's there. So hopefully that makes enough sense. I'm going to go through a bit of history now about how we got here and what we've talked about today. But I'm happy to take any questions now. I think once we go through this sort of overview, we'll come back through and see whether we're willing to accept this project proposal. But happy to take any questions, further questions now before we move on, if you like. No, I'll raise your hand as you go. Cool. So a bit of a timeline about how we got to here now. So encounters have been kicking around for quite a while now in the clinical group. So these sort of blue ones have come out of the clinical group, clinical focus group, and CDG. So way back in the first release of the AU core data for interoperability was in 2023. That introduced the reason for encounter and encounter modality. The clinical focus group was then started talking about reason for encounter in 2024. They talked about the idea of an encounter summary in February 25. They then sort of renamed encounter summary to encounter record based on the feedback they were getting there about the naming. In November 2025, there was a proposal for a definition of they created some definitions, which we'll have a little bit of a look at later about an encounter record, and looking at an MVP, minimum viable product, for what that would be in AUCDI. In January this year, they started talking further about the definitions and some consumer journeys. And then February this year, we had the AU Encounter Record Discovery Workshop. So that was the Sparked Community Co-Design Workshop that we held in Hobart in February. And we spent a whole day there sort of looking about what this AU Encounter Record was about. In between that and the latest one, the CFG did some more work on some draft consumer journeys. And then we had another Encounter Record Discovery Workshop just in May this year. It was another Spark Community Co-Design Workshop, which we held in Brisbane, where again, we spent another whole day talking about encounter records. And then in June, we released an expression of interest to see who in the community would be interested in working on developing the requirements to support an AU Encounter Record FHIR implementation guide. We got a really good response from that. So here we are now today talking about standing up a project to start work on an AU Encounter Record FHIR implementation guide. So it's been a long journey. This just hasn't come out of thin air. We've been sort of developing this over a long period of time and kind of reached this point now. So a few highlights from these discovery workshops that we had. Like I mentioned, we had two of them, one in February in 2026 and one in May this year as well. We have full set of the workshop minutes, the slides, the Menti results, amazing set of minutes for both of those workshops as well. So if you'd like to get more detail and sort of look at the history of what we've discussed, you can have a look there. Noting that these were just discovery workshops. So no decisions were made out of any of this. It was really just to talk about the concepts, trying to get a better understanding, a shared understanding of what an encounter record is, what we need to discuss, what we need to work through as part of a project. So noting any of this information we're talking about now, no decisions have been made. That's what we would do once we stand up the project and we start working through it as part of this work group. So these are just a few highlights. I'm going to go through these reasonably quickly because I said the full details are on those minutes, but just a few highlights out of some of these workshops. So this encounter record purpose is something that came out of the clinical focus group. So this is their draft definition. So this hasn't been finalized there. And on the left there is their now famous, Kylene's famous hamburger diagram, it's commonly referred to now. So their definition here is that an encounter record is a record of an individual's interaction or set of interactions with the healthcare system. Rather than a complete patient record is information recorded from an encounter which reflects and supports care. Encounter record information can be used to generate patient summaries as well as support reuse of data, forms, referrals, CDS, population health, etc. And the AU encounter record will support the consumer and their healthcare providers with timely and current access to relevant encounter-specific information to enable effective coordination of care. So lots of words there. What we've done is we did this as part of the workshop too. We kind of translated that hamburger diagram into one of our own and talked about what's relevant here from the technical group. So for us in AU Core work group and talking about FHIR and exchange, we're interested in this AU encounter record, that blue box on the right that's in the information exchange box. So that's where we've got other FHIR IGs here. We've got AU patient summary, we've got AU Core FHIR APIs, we've got AU e-requesting. And the encounter record that's in the clinical information system would create a FHIR AU encounter record from the encounter information that it has within its system. So encounter information is populated into the patient record through a number of sources, whether it's an AI scribe, whether it's a clinician entering the information, whether it's from wearables or other devices and the like. So that information ends up in the patient record. And AU CDI kind of defines the data groups and the information that should be captured and structured within a clinical information system. But that's not necessarily FHIR, right? That's maybe, may not be, right? But what we're interested in here, if you want to exchange that information with another system, that you would do that through FHIR, through this AU encounter record, which is a FHIR representation of that encounter information. So from our point of view for this AU encounter record FHIR IG project, we're looking at that box on the right there, which is the AU encounter record. That's what we'd be interested in talking about. In our discovery workshop, we talked about a number of use cases that this might be. Oh, sorry, Mandy, did you have a question on that last box?
Yes, I saw that AI in that in this slide, and I kind of a little bit shivered. I have attended the government's AI, I don't know, progression thoughts and approaches, and I am not very expert in this. I have some knowledge. I studied with MIT program, and there are gaps there. So what I'm trying to ask is, how is this AI going to come in and how are we safeguarding it? I love the way that you guys have done FHIR and everything. That sounds very secure. But if that AI comes in, how is that going to affect this process? Like, that's something that I think it's worth taking into account and having a thought about that. That's all.
Yeah, well, we definitely did that. So in Brisbane, there was we did have a panel discussion, and its entire focus was on that. Actually, I can jump ahead 2 slides here. I think it is. So there was a panel discussion that was discussed exactly that, about the AI scribe and the role of AI in the structured import of encounter information, how that information gets into the patient record. So there was a whole panel discussion. If you do go have a look at the minutes, there is quite a bit of information in there about those sorts of things that were discussed. And it's definitely a very interesting sort of area to look at. And there's lots of questions. And there's lots of people working in this space too about how this works. Danielle.
I'm also thinking, Mandy, what city are you in? How can we get you into one of the like face-to-faces so we can like get you on the day?
I am happy to adjust. I am right now freelancing. So I am looking for kind of an avenue. I can't keep my eyes open because I feel like the investment I have done in the program from MIT has opened my eyes to a hell lot of risks and ways to manage it. And I feel like our country is rushing and we are blindsided. You know, when you're driving and you got a blind spot, we have a blind spot on the risks and the tools that are available. I have encountered lots of hallucination. You can do a lot of LLMs and give information, and then next minute it's all gone. So there's a way around it. I am still learning. I would really like to work with like-minded people. I have got some options with the interoperability that I believe makes it 100% secure. And there are gaps in my knowledge because my field is nursing ICU. Then I did IT when I was overseas, did my nursing back over in the 90s. So I have some knowledge on computer-based and programming from the basic and DOS then down to HTML and others. So I have some knowledge. I done data analytics. I have also knowledge onto platforms that NASA have used, when they do projects for Mars, the interoperability of things. I have learned a few things there. And I think I have got the key to interoperability. I'm happy, Danielle, to work with you or anyone, but I'm also worried because I have had experiences of knowledge being stolen. I kind of sat there and I thought, yeah, that's what I thought. And I just don't want that. I'm 55. I don't want this to happen to
That's
me
fine.
again. So I'm kind of have a tight chest.
Well, I
I'm
would
happy to
really
come in
love
and
to see if we
chat.
could get you at one of our sparked face-to-face conversations. And I don't think you have to worry about things being stolen there. That's because we're not really solutioning there. I think it's a group of incredibly like diverse things across clinical, across technical spaces, really kind of exploring the problem space. So it would be great
Yeah,
if we could find a way,
love it.
or what would be the right event for you to be at one of those. I think it'd be awesome.
I would love that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
But yeah, it was definitely that sort of, yeah, there was some lots of, it was a really good debate and discussion. A lot of those topics you probably mentioned actually came up in that. But that was about how we get this information into the patient record. I think from our project point of view, we're going to be more about how we get the information out of the patient record and how we exchange on that. But there will be underlying discussions and things we need to think about there about, well, the source of the information, how does that affect what's in or how the encounter record is presented? And AI will be an underlying theme there, absolutely. Like I mentioned, we talked about potential use cases for the encounter record and tried to understand which would be the primary design drivers for the encounter record. And the word there, primary, was important because I think an encounter record is incredibly diverse, like as encounters are. And so we needed to sort of identify what would be the primary design drivers, the primary use cases that would drive the design for the encounter record. And we've had a few discussions about some of these. This was a Menti that came out of that, talking about where that sort of key design drivers would come from, being that continuity of care, access at point of care, consumer access, and then tapering off down into, I think, what would be more of the secondary use, like an encounter record would be valuable for these things, but they're probably not for the primary design drivers as far as clinical decision support, record reconciliation, generation of clinical artifacts, reporting, and other use cases. It would definitely have a role in all of those, but whether that's the primary design we're going to look at. But again, this is just the feeling that came out of discovery workshops. We'll go through all of this when we're actually getting into the project. This was, again, the draft data groups that have come out of the AUCDI, looking at what they thought would need to be part of an encounter record minimum viable product. What we kind of looked at was the mapping to those things that we've already got in FHIR. So all these things in green are things we've already got in AU Core. So we have looked at a lot of these things already. There's a few there that we haven't. I think the clinical groups are still looking at exactly what needs to be part of that minimum viable product for an encounter record. So this is still evolving as well, but we say we've got pretty good coverage of what's there. So we're just trying to work out what extra, how else this might evolve. Bezak?
Hi, Bezad here, everyone. I'm founder of Get Integrity API. I just want to have one question here. Is provenance, life cycle history, and independent verification metadata expected to be part of the encounter record requirements discussion? or mainly handled through related FHIR resources such as provenance, audit event, document reference, or other implementation patterns?
Yep, they're good questions. I do have a slide. I can probably jump ahead, given that's where you talked to that. So these are some of the, let's see, I don't think I've got the next slide now. It must be this one. So this is the characteristics that people said that Encounter records should have. So exchangeable and discoverable, storable and document storage, persistent and mutable, human readable, contextual purpose, patient, author, and location. So I think that persistent and immutable falls into some of those sorts of things as well. All right. So the things that were less important about doing direct queries, resource updates, synchronization, bulk data. So we kind of lent towards where the discovery session seemed to go is that by document-based exchange would be well suited to an encounter record. So having a document, something that has a lot of those features you're talking about there, right? Having a document that is persistent, immutable, something that I can share. I know where it came from. I know it hasn't changed. Those sorts of things forming part of that. So yeah, I think a number of those would be features that we'd be looking for as part of that encounter record as a document.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll just jump back. But yeah, so as far as the sort of data groups, this is sort of data groups we're looking at. We do have, so what we'd be doing as much as possible here for Encounter Record is leveraging AU Core. We've done a lot of the work in AU Core already. So now working out how that sort of maps across to what we need in an Encounter Record. We also had discussions in the Hobart one around the data range for that encounter information. So this is I think it came up a lot, certainly in a very much our first discovery workshop, was what's in an encounter record is it depends, right? It depends on the context of the encounter. It depends on what's relevant. And so these are some of the things we need to work through that we've got encounter information, and that's made up of the encounter metadata, so information about the encounter itself, historical information, so patient history information that was identified in the current encounter. So it might not have been diagnosed in the encounter, but it was first raised in the encounter. So it's historical, but it's made available. Then we've got encounter-specific information that originates, it's newly generated, updated, diagnosed, confirmed in the current encounter. And then we've got other things, documents, artifacts, and maybe requests and the like as part of it. So again, looking at, well, what do we want in the encounter record? Do we need all of this? It depends. Is it flexible enough so it can have mixes of this based on what the context of the encounter is? So we've had some discussions about that, and tying into that is, well, what are those minimum data requirements? Like what's essential and going to be absolutely required for every encounter record? What would be recommended that's add value is not always relevant, and which is optional. We did a bit of workshop on one of these. I think the core encounter metadata and the things like patient, the practitioner, the organization, the encounter itself would be required, but then potentially everything else is optional because it's not a patient summary where you're trying to provide a whole summary of the patient. It's contextual to the encounter itself, and therefore you can't say we recommend you always include something if it's not relevant to that encounter, but maybe it is. But again, this is some of the debates we have to have and work out where we draw that line in the sand is about how flexible versus how sort of mandated an encounter record would be. We also had discussions around classifying and labeling encounter records. So discovery is going to be a big part of an encounter record. If you're trying to find relevant information, how do we classify these? So how we label them so that you can discover them and find the information that's relevant to you about encounters. So again, a few mentees here talking about what level of granularity were people interested in classifying encounters, and like what sort of information might we put in the title to make it more relevant and easier to find. So a couple of themes there. And then the one that we sort of touched on a bit here, but what is this encounter? That blue box there, this FHIR implementation guide that we're going to develop. What is it? So we have a clinical information system that creates encounter records from the encounter information in that system. It's going to be shared with other systems, might be shared with My Health Record, Health Connect Australia, other clinical information systems. It may be a source of information that feeds another encounter, right? So what is this encounter record? Buzzard.
Sorry to interrupt you. I've got
You're right.
another question here. Speaking of which, like sharing, exchanging information and records, the question is for downstream users of an encounter record, is there interest in scenarios where the clinical payload remains in the source system, but another party still needs to independently verify integrity, provenance, version history, or lifecycle context?
Yeah, so you'll see those arrows there on the right there, the My Health Record cleanup. They go both ways, right? Because this is some of that, and we did have some discussions in some of these discovery workshops about how it is exchanged. And I think there's a number of different models here. And one is I send it to someone, right? Here's a bundled thing. You have it, right? But as part of that, you may need to verify that it hasn't changed, right? You're going to persist in your system, right? So it was authored by this other system. You're going to persist in your system. You want to ensure that it hasn't changed, hasn't modified. There may be other scenarios where you might upload it to My Health Record, right? And then My Health Record enables other systems to access it out of there. Health Connect Australia and the like might provide a discovery mechanism where you can find out that there's one of these in someone else's system, and then you can go and access that from there. So again, there's lots of different models here, and that's what we need to work out is what this thing is, and to support those different types of exchange mechanisms we want to support.
But this mechanism, verification mechanism you just explained, does that mean that, like sensitive clinical, information and data will be, exposed or be shared actually, like raw sensitive, data? Because my point is that can we just, verify at the metadata level and just, preserve like privacy in verification, mechanism?
Yeah, they're good questions. Short answer is I don't know. I think that's part of the thing we need to talk about with the exchange, right? I mean, how do we structure this encounter record and for appropriate exchange? Yeah, I think there's plenty of things to talk about there. I think just jumping on a bit about those characteristics, there were more characteristics. So Danielle, did you want to jump in?
No, I mean, maybe my comment is better at the end because I liked what you said there around there's a lot of work and a lot of things we have to do. And the first step for that is us agreeing that this is something we're going to work on together. So I'm all for it, and I think that what we're going through today is a really good summary of the extensive discussions. But all we're really looking for, I think, at the end of this conversation is will we work on this together, over the next couple of years? I think that's what the vote is going to come down to. So yeah, I just
100%. And
that
that's,
in context.
just I probably do need to hurry up a bit so we get to that. So yeah, we talked about this characteristic. There were other characteristics as well, but that was part of that exercise. Well, what's important? What characteristics does this thing need to have? So yeah, like I said, there's lots of information out of those workshops. If you've got an interest, have a look. The minutes there are awesome. There's a long read, so you might be committed, but you can have a look at the slides. Have a look at all the Menti outputs and everything. Like I said before, no decisions were made, so don't be concerned about where a conversation went. If it went differently to where you thought it should. They'll be brought in if we have this as a project. So the next bit was we've had those discovery workshops. We've done an encounter record expression of interest to see is there community interest in actually having a project for the encounter record. So we had overwhelming response to that expression of interest. So we had 71 individual responses from over 50 organizations. showing interest in an AU encounter record, FHIR IG. So I'm not going to go through all those things in here, but there was like some examples of some of the things that were raised in that EOI of themes of where that interest is. You can see there's a real breadth of interest here. Like it's not siloed. I think that might be one of our problems we will have, is that this thing is so diverse that how do we work out what we need as that first release, because it's applicable across so many different things. And we've got there some of the products that people were looking at being relevant. There was a lot that are in the planning or early design stages or are just interested in seeing where this goes. But we've got a whole heap of different types of systems there that were raised through this EOI where I think that an encounter record would be applicable. So overwhelming response there about wanting to have an encounter record and its relevance. Yeah, definitely interest there. So now tying back to what Danielle mentioned there, what are we trying to do today? We're not trying to solve all the problems of the encounter record. I think just the fact we've had some conversations here today talk about the breadth of interest. But what we want to do today is work out, well, do we want to have this project in the AU core work group? So does it fit our mission and charter? Are we willing to govern it? Are there any other projects we know of that would be similar to this or overlap? Are we aware of any other projects that would overlap with this? Are there any others that should be co-sponsors? And basically, do we accept the project proposal? Do we want to do it? So that's what we're going to look at now. So now we've had that sort of context, that bit of background about the encounter record, the interest, sorts of things we've talked about. I'm just going to go back to the project proposal itself. So you can see here on the project proposal that I went through before that we're not constraining scope on this, right? So we will do that as part of, I think Danielle's put in the comments, we'll look at having scoping workshop. And it's definitely going to be interesting about how we work out what this release one is, what's achievable, where we want to go. But what we're saying is there's interest in a project. We feel it fits with AU Core. We're just really here looking at developing an implementation guide. I think there will be, this will run over a number of years as with numerous iterations as we further develop it. Not constraining it, but it is something that us as the AU Core work group want to work on. So we've got like I said, the purpose, the scope, and the usage we've gone through reasonably generic. And we've got a proposer. We're saying the AU Core work group would be the sponsor. And the target release time is for the first release would be the June 2028. So just feeding into why it would be that. What we would normally do through the HS7 Australia governance processes, we would probably go, given this is the first release, we've never done it before, that we would do a ballot for comment, and then we would do a ballot for working standard. So we would go through 2 ballot for cycles with this. We would look to probably have a ballot for comment about this time next year. We will go out to the broader community, including international, and basically say, this is what we've come up with. Tell us what you think, right? And get that input on that ballot for comment. We would resolve and go through any issues out of that. And then we'd go through a second ballot, which would be the publication ballot, the ballot for working standard for our first release. So that would be, we normally, with all of our projects, they are a much longer first release, given that sort of we're doing something brand new, something new, and then we'll roll into sort of more BAU style releases after that. Daniel.
I'm going to steal your thunder and say I would like to motion approval of this project proposal for the AU Core work group to continue, noting also that Janie has popped in the chat that she'd be happy to second.
There we go. Excellent.
Great. Do you want me to launch a poll for that?
I think so, yeah, unless there are any other comments or questions. I think it's imperative the next step is we work on this together. And this is what we need to do that.
Alrighty. Should be on screen. So the proposal to accept the project proposal.
Plus one in the chat.
Plus one, Michael. Yep. Okay, we're at 80, about 85%. So I'll just do a quick countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end that poll. Okay, so results 92% affirmative. So that's 23 out of 25 votes. 24 out of 25 votes. That's including you, Michael, and then 2 abstaining. So that one's passed. Excellent.
Okay. All right. So then, given that we will have to, so what we do now is that project proposal will go to the HL7 Australia Technical Steering Committee for endorsement. So they'll do an assessment too across the other work groups to see if there's any crossover or the like, or any concerns about the project. But I'm the representative for AU Core on the Technical Steering Committee, so I will take that to them for endorsement. So once they've done that, we can then set up the project. So looking to probably start project meetings once we've got all those governance things sorted out. We've got, I think, in the end of August, a connectathon. So it would probably make sense to start our meetings after that date. I think we're definitely going to need 90-minute meetings, given the discussions we're going to have and getting started. And that is our traditional 90-minute meeting, probably with a fortnightly cadence. And we do have a slot that we'd probably potentially reuse at the moment, that we've paused the patient summary meetings for a moment. We'll have to juggle that when that comes back. But we do have the opportunity to reuse that time slot, which was on Fridays at 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, looking potentially for a first meeting on 4th of September 2026. Probably looking for if anyone has any other thoughts or thinks that we shouldn't look to do that. But otherwise, once we get the project started, we can look to do those. Richard.
How about Tuesday?
Yeah. The only reason I had that slot is because we already had a slot, so we already had community members coming to that slot. If we're going to propose different times, we probably need to go through a whole process of proposing slots and seeing what availability people have. But we can do that. Did you have particularly you can't do Friday? Is that?
Yeah, personally, I can't do Fridays. I think the 4th of September is far enough in the future that we've got time to go through such a process. And this may well last long enough that patient summary will pick up again.
Yeah. Okay. What I might do is we do have now a Zulip topic for this. I just created it this morning. So this will be for the project. So we'll use it for notifications. I don't know if someone can paste that in the chat. But what it might do is we can do a poll in that to work out the meeting times we're going to have once we've got the project endorsed. If you do have other questions about it, you can also just email Spark to CSIRO. Or any other questions that we might have now. I think we're probably nearly at time, but great. Thanks, Sally. So put that in the chat. So this is the Zulip chat. If you haven't signed up to chat.fire.org, please, you should do so. It's a wealth of information. Mine's not going to load, but it's where we generally do the discussions about it. We will also, once we set up a project, you'll be able to register through Spark as you do for our other Spark projects. So you'll be able to go to Spark and then you'll go on the mailing list. So you get email notifications and the like with that as well. But we can't set that up until we've got the project endorsed. But we'll do that and let people know about that as well. Daniel?
I think one of the other things that I just wanted to raise around Encounter Record and looking to have consumer representation support, and I can see Janie on the line, which I was very excited by. I don't know if Janie, that means that you're going to stay with us in the Encounter Record project, but I think we do want to have a number of consumer representatives who can support us as we go through that process.
I would like to grab Mandy as on the consumer side,
Mhm.
not just the technical as a bridge as well.
Well, that's great. I'll have a chat with Kate and so forth and see
Yeah.
what we can support. But yeah, love to see you in any meeting, Janie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think what's happened to me this year really gives me a purpose for having an encounter record, so I'm quite committed to it. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you. All right. I think we're probably to next meeting.
Yep.
And that's not the right slide.
Yeah.
The wrong one is highlighted there. We're actually the next meeting will be 6th of August. So, but yeah. Do you want it, Steve? You can probably.
Yeah. I haven't got the right slide either, but I will bring that up. Yeah. Okay, so the ballot snapshot, as discussed, going out in about a week, 29th of July, and 6th of August. Yeah, so I've got 6th of August on
Oh
my,
yeah, yeah,
on my slides.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not
Um,
highlighted. The wrong one's highlighted.
oh, wrong one's highlighted. Yeah, right. So it's highlighted this one. Yeah, it's fine. So as Michael mentioned, going to do a ballot process 101 um, uh, discussion to talk about how the ballot works, and then we'll dive into the eCore main call as well on the 6th of August. Reminder again about the Connectathon 25th and 26th of August. So sign up for that. That's in Brisbane, and that the ballot for the working standard will be happening in August as well. Apart from that, that brings us to a close. So thanks everybody for your attendance and participation. It was a great meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank
See you next
you.
time.
And Steve, if you could not end the meeting for all, that'd
Yep,
be great.
sure. No worries.